On today's Enrique's First Time Buyer channel, I want to tell you everything about closing costs when buying a home. Hey, welcome back. Enrique here. I hope you are having a great day and welcome to my channel. This is the First Time Buyer channel where we talk about everything related to purchasing a home. So I want to invite you to hit subscribe, and I also want to invite you to check out some of our other videos. We cover just about every topic every single week when it comes to buying a home, whether it's credit, income, finding the perfect lender, finding the perfect realtor, or some of the questions that come up a lot. Now, a single week doesn't go by that at least I don't talk to 2 or 3 people who ask me the same thing. Enrique, what are closing costs? How does that work? Who pays for it? Tell me about it. So in the next few minutes, we're going to unpack the whole story about closing costs and the reality of closing costs, okay? So here we go. So first of all, you need to know that when you purchase a home, there are going to be 2 components that are going to be taken into account when buying a home and your financing. One of them is going to be your down payment, and the other one is going to be your closing costs. A lot of people get those 2 confused. Your down payment is the money that you put towards the purchase of the home. So let's say you were buying a $300,000 home. If you put $30,000 down, then you're going to finance the remaining balance. Now, your down payment cannot be confused with your deposit. The deposit is a very small amount of money that you put at the very front that, of course, is going to get applied towards your down payment. But a lot of people say, oh, I already did the down payment. I put $3,000. That's not your down payment. That's your deposit. Your down payment is going to be 3%, 3.5%, 5%, 10%, 20%, depending on what kind of financing you have. But that money goes towards your house. Now, in addition to that, your realtor, your lender is going to be talking to you about closing costs. Recently, I had someone that says, well, I didn't even know I had to pay closing costs. When they came to me on the first day, they had already spoken to another lender. They had made a couple of offers, and they had never heard of closing costs. So we had to kind of walk them through the process. So the closing cost is the amount of money that needs to be paid in order for you to close the transaction. Typically, the buyer pays for their closing costs and the seller pays for their closing costs. They each pay their own. So we're going to break down a little bit about what is the closing cost and where does that number come from. So first thing you need to know is the closing costs are necessary pretty much on any transaction. If anybody tells you that they're doing a loan with no closing costs, they're really not telling you the truth. There is always closing costs. There's always expenses associated with the purchase of a home. So they are divided into different sections. You're going to have lender costs. You're going to have third-party costs like an appraisal or processing, a credit report. Then you're going to have your service provider costs. That's going to be your escrow, your title, some of the inspections like the home warranty, some of the things that you have to do in terms of the transaction, the notary, and then you're going to have some recording or government fees like recording to the county. Then you're going to have a big bulk of the closing costs are going to be your prepaid and also your impound. So if you choose to have impounds on your loan, you're going to have closing costs. Now, I'm not going to break all of those down for you because then we'll be here several hours. We're going to do other videos where we basically are going to break down those closing costs. But you're going to have, basically that's the idea. You're going to have your prepays, your impounds, the recording fees, the third-party fees, the lender fees, and then any other fee that is associated with buying a home. For example, your homeowner association first month. Maybe you have to pay for the documents of the HOA. You're going to have some items related to paying off certain taxes or certain things that are required with a home. So how much are closing costs? Well, there's no set number for that. In fact, even when you start the process, you're not going to have an exact number, so we have to approximate. We used to say that closing costs were about 3% of the price of a home. That's not necessarily always the case. In some cases, if you have impounds, the closing costs are going to be less. In some cases, it's going to be more. To give you an idea, I just did a loan for $400,000 and the closing costs were approximately $9,000. That's a reasonable amount. Now, in my case, I don't have any lender fees, so none of it goes to me. We don't charge an origination fee. We don't charge an admin fee. We don't charge any points to do the loan. in most cases. So these closing costs that I'm telling you are mostly third-party related, so everybody else has to get paid. Now, out of the entire transaction, I would say that closing costs and understanding closing costs and reading the estimates can be the most complicated part of it. You're going to have a certain amount of trust with the person that you're doing business with, your realtor and your lender, because you're not going to get a black and white answer up front. You're going to have an estimate of the closing costs. The estimate is going to be pretty approximate, but the numbers are going to change all the way to the end because prorations and taxes and some of the things that are being spent money on are going to be deleted. Now, there are certain things that you have to be clear that we cannot change. If I'm going to charge you any money to do the loan, I have to disclose that up front. I cannot come back later and charge you that money. The escrow and title fees, all the settlement fees, there's very little tolerance for that. So those closing costs are pretty much set in stone. The only thing that can change, for example, is how much your insurance is going to be. Or, if you're shopping around for insurance, we're going to disclose an estimate and then we're going to get the right insurance. So what you need to know is that closing costs can be complicated. That is the reason why you have to be working with a really, really solid lender that can walk you through the process. I personally speak to most of my clients in person, either on the phone or on video, and I walk them through the closing statement, the estimated closing statement, right up front so they understand where every penny goes. Now, a couple more things. Number one, can a lender be charging me too much money in closing costs? Absolutely. In fact, many times when we take a loan from another lender, when we get a customer calls and say, hey, do you mind giving this a second opinion? We realize there are some lenders that are charging a lot of money. There's a couple of online lenders that are very popular, the ones that you see on TV, that are famous for charging thousands of dollars in lender fees that we don't charge. So going local in your community to a broker is always going to be your best bet, because that broker is going to be able to help you shop around to see if you're getting the best deal. If you started with working with someone online from one of the national things that you see on TV, chances are you're going to be paying a little too much in fees. So always get a second opinion. Second thing you need to know about closing costs is that, the closing costs are an important part of the transaction, but they're not the most important part. So make sure you're getting good advice. And the third thing is learning where the money is going to come from for closing costs. So your friends and your family, maybe your lender, maybe even your agent is going to tell you that the seller can actually cover some of those closing costs. And that's true. They don't allow for anybody else to make a down payment for you. The seller cannot make the down payment for you, but they can help with closing costs. They can either pay all of them or most of them, depending on the type of loan. What's really, really important is that you talk to your agent. Lately, we have not been able to get a lot of buyers with a lot of closing costs paid by the seller because of the competition. What does that mean? Well, when you have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 offers, all of them competing to get into the house, and you're asking for $7,000 or $9,000 in closing costs, well, chances are you're not going to get the house. That's what happens a lot, right? You're not going to get the house. So be very careful when you ask for closing costs. In some cases, you may actually have to wait to save a little more money so you can pay for your closing costs. There are some alternatives. We're not going to get into detail, but there are some ability for some lenders to give you some rebates for you to pay for some of the closing costs, especially with government loans. There's also some programs out there that may be able to give you some money for closing costs, but the reality is that you're going to have to come up with some money for those closing costs in most cases. So if you are nervous about closing costs, don't be. If you're talking to the right lender, if you're talking to the correct realtor, they are going to be able to walk you through that process, especially your lender. Your lender is your guide that is going to walk you through it. So if you're in California, I'd love to give us a call. We're always here to help. If you're looking to maybe get some help and you want to learn who the good broker is in your area, go to www.findamortgagebroker.com and put your zip code, and you'll be able to find someone in your area that's going to help you out. And they are in every single state of the union. So we're here to help. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to check out our other videos and learn more about buying a home. This is Enrique with First West Financial. Have a great week.